There once was a man who hadn't spoken a word in 17 years until a 6-year-old girl asked him a question that cracked his world open. He lived in a small town where everyone knew his silence. Kids called him the Shadow because he moved like a ghost. Adults whispered he'd lost his voice to tragedy, but nobody ever asked why. One winter morning, a girl in a red coat stood in his path. She held a crumpled drawing of a dragon. "Does this look brave?" she asked. Therefore, he froze. He could have walked away. He always walked away, but her boots were untied and her eyes were wet from bullies. So he knelt, tied her laces, nodded at the drawing. Therefore, she hugged him. That night, he stared at his dusty piano. He hadn't played since his wife died, but his hands hovered over the keys and played one note. Therefore, the next day, he left a sketch of the dragon on her porch. The girl returned with crayons. "Teach me," she said, but he shook his head. Therefore, she sat on his step and colored anyway. Weeks passed. She brought him broken toys, math homework, and a wounded bird. He fixed them all in silence. But one day, she asked, "Why don't you talk?" His chest tightened. Therefore, he pointed to his throat and shook his head. "That's okay," she said. "My mom says listening is louder." But he wanted to answer. So he woke at 3 a.m., dug out an old tape recorder, pressed record, whispered one word, broken, deleted it, tried again, lonely. Therefore, the next morning, he left the recorder on her porch. She pressed play, ran to his door. "You have a voice!" She laughed, but he slammed it shut. Therefore, she slid a note underneath. "I'll keep listening." 1 year later, he stood at a town art show, holding her hand. The crowd stared at his paintings. Dragons, storms, a girl in red. But when she raised her painting, a man with a golden voice, he choked. Therefore, he spoke. "Thank you." Just that. The room gasped, but the girl grinned. "Told you," she whispered. "Here's the secret. Your voice isn't found in grand speeches. It's in the first step you're too scared to take. The word you delete, the hand you don't pull away. Start small. Whisper, a stumble. Let someone see the crack. Because a closed mouth can't heal." Oh, and that man? He still speaks rarely. But when he does, the town leans in. Funny, he says, how a 17-year silence began with a hello. There once was a man who hadn't spoken a word in 17 years until he realized his voice wasn't lost, just waiting. What's yours waiting for?